Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're gonna jump into some long-awaited nuclear revenge. Our first story today comes to us from Dignified Dingo, How a Friendship Was Broken. Let's jump right in. This story is 100% true, and I even left in the parts that I didn't really want to admit to. I depict violence in this story, so if you have trouble with that, you might not want to read this. I don't know if this story will fit proper in the subreddit, nor if anyone will like it. It is not a story of me at my best, but it is revenge. I was 18 years old in 2001 and just started getting into the party scene. I liked the drugs, I liked the dance music, I'm an introvert, and I was trying to become social. During this time, I met some friends. John became my best friend for a decade, and Brian. At the time, I had just totaled my car, so John would drive for me and we did everything together. He liked the same sports as me, was very giving, and was down to do all the crazy stuff that I would impulsively want to do. As a thanks for him being such a good friend, I would pay for gas and drugs. At the time, I was dealing coke and ecstasy, not major dealing, but I usually had drugs, and John would never pay for what I gave him. Brian was a rave child, already pretty burnt out from drugs, but he was a lot of fun, knew lots of people, introduced me to the rave scene. Now, I worked and was dealing on the side, so I had okay money. I would start paying for Brian to get into clubs and for drugs sometimes. He was kind of a mooch though, so I started cutting him off. Then things started going missing. He stole my expensive sunglasses, he stole drugs and money from me, he stole from the other dealers, and there were people looking for him. I finally cut him out of my life when he stole some ecstasy from me and fed it to a girl so he could take advantage of her. Now, this girl and I had already hung out 2 weeks and we made out, but I'm slow to make moves. I'm an introvert and don't have many relationships, and Brian had a beautiful girlfriend who was a part of our friend group and pulls this crap. A couple weeks later, I see his girlfriend at the bank and say, F Brian, and just so you know, he cheated on you. She came over to my house to talk about it, and later that night, she and I hooked up. I guess it was a revenge screw for her to get back at Brian. I was hoping it would be more than that. Something like a month later, I get a call from Brian saying he heard I'm selling some ecstasy and acid and says he wants to buy it. The whole phone call felt off and was pretty sure something was up. I told him to come stop by to get it. John was with me and had a 45 in his truck. I told him to go get it since this felt off. He grabbed it and stuffed it in his waistband, and we waited for Brian to show up. Brian shows up with 2 friends. We talk a little bit, he hands me some money for the drugs, I hand him the drugs, then he brings up he heard I slept with his girlfriend. I told him if he wants to talk about this or handle it, let's go over here and handle it. Just then, one friend tackles John to the ground, the other pins me. John is fighting the other guy while my arms are pinned behind me, and Brian is punching and kicking me in the face. I had some earrings, and he rips them out of my ears. He then steals the rest of the drugs I had on me, but leaves the money he just gave me for the drugs he paid for, idiot, and all 3 of them take off running. I go to pull the 45 from John's waistband, but he blocks me from grabbing it and tells me it's not worth it. I find out the next day that the whole reason Brian did that was for a quick fix before he left town. That night, he was on his way across the country to live with his sister. I was livid. I thought about finding out where he was living and driving there myself with my 38 Special. I was so angry it was affecting my sleep and all my waking moments. For months and months, this went on. 10 months later, I'm at a friend's house when there's a knock on the door. I turn around as the door opens and it's Brian. He says, "Is Michael here?" Then noticed me and says, "Never mind," slams the door and runs. I find out that he burned all his bridges at his sister's house and had to move back with his parents. A week later, I go to my friend's house and have him call Brian over. John talked me into leaving my pew-pew in the car. He had a small bat to regulate with, but I told him this was between Brian and I and told him to stay back unless things go bad for me. Did some coke, gave John some coke, and we were ready to go. The house had a 20-foot walkway to it with railings, and a car was parked at the end of it and had tinted windows. We waited in the car until Brian walked up to the door, then I charged out of the car and run at him as fast as I can. "Oh crap," Brian said. "Oh crap is right," I said, as I smashed him as hard as I could in the face. We fought for a minute while John stood at the end of the walkway with the bat in his hand. Brian had one good punch on me that I ended up chipping a tooth from. The coke made me bite down too hard when he hit me. He then made a run for John and punches him in the face. John wasn't having that, so he pulled out the bat and started beating him. Brian fights him for the bat, but John is stronger and rips it out of his hands and passes it to me. I started beating him with the bat as he fought John. I'll give Brian credit though. I told him to lay down and this will go a lot easier, but he stayed up fighting the whole time. I started wailing onto his back and head. I could see the bruises appear on his back as soon as I hit him. He finally went down when I cracked him in the head and fractured his skull. And then, once he went down, John punted his head like a 50-yard field goal. Brian was done. As he is bleeding on the porch, Brian then asked me if we can be friends again since we are even. I was like, WTF? No. He then asks what he has to do so he can leave. I told him to leave his clothes and walk home. "You want my clothes? No, I want you to leave them here and go." He stripped to his boxers and walked home on a cold October with snow on the ground. Well, I thought we were dealing with this like they do on the streets. He robs me and beats me, so I beat the F out of him. But no, he goes home to his parents' house and then calls the cops on me. So the cops came and arrested John and I. So I took as much of the blame as I could so John wouldn't go to jail for as long as I did, but he did end up doing some time. I hate jail and prisons, but that night I was able to sleep knowing Brian was sleeping in the hospital. This story is 20 years old now. Since then, I've never had another friend that takes advantage of me. Brian was the one who taught me a valuable lesson. Don't invite people like that into your life. I dealt with a lot of anger issues back then, but I've never beat another person like this again, and I've learned how to handle anger better. I honestly don't like fighting, but I was so good to this friend who just kept talking and talking and then mugs me. I no longer deal drugs or use them, except for smoking weed. Doesn't stop me from effing up still though, since this wasn't the last time I was arrested. So Opie mentioned that this was about 20 years ago, but they also mentioned in another comment that they're now on parole for running from the cops on a sport bike and crashing it in an excess of 125 miles per hour. OP seems to be a career criminal, and I think we'll just leave it at that. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Lyra Drago. "My super entitled mother tried controlling me. I get my revenge for years of her bad behavior." Let's jump right in. So I'm in my 20s, and as is my significant other that I'll call fiance for this post. Keep in mind, I'm heavily disabled mentally and physically, important for later, due to certain reasons caused by my biological parents. I refuse to relive those events, so I won't say what happened to me during the time I lived with them growing up, but I will say my parents are divorced and hate each other. I have a service dog, and she's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'll call her Melly for this post to protect my privacy. Strap in for the ride, folks, because this is nuclear. Due to my physical disabilities and my mental illness that I had legally diagnosed by an actual certified professional, I receive federal aid because I am physically unable to work as a result. I've been receiving benefits and using them for the right purposes like my rent, getting my college loan paid off, and among other things, I'm using it to afford my medications for my conditions. See, my mother is a firm disbeliever of mental illness and states that because she had a bad life, no one else can suffer, and would always use that excuse with me. She was unfortunately the person that the government dubbed in control of my aid benefits. That was until I moved away eventually when my now significant other helped me get out of that situation. During the time that I was with her, she wouldn't report to the government like she was supposed to. I even told her she had to. Her reply, "Why don't you report it yourself then?" Now I would, but the government doesn't want anything to do with me since I'm not the one that the government dubbed was in charge. I tried on multiple occasions to convince her, to no avail. That's when I tried myself. They literally asked me directly after getting my name from my representative, my mom, and cut me off as I was trying to explain the situation. When that failed, I tried going in person only to get met with, "We need to talk to your representative, or they have to be present for you to speak to us." This is because my mental illnesses made me physically incapable of distinguishing reality from the psychosis episodes I randomly get. Shout out to Fiance for literally always being my anchor, and Melly too. So I could understand from their point of view. That did still kind of sting though. Imagine being told that because you have a mental illness that you're unable to be a functioning enough adult to speak to someone. I got penalized for lying to the government as a result of her stupid choice. See, the years that I lived with my mom, I wasn't told how much aid and benefits I was getting. I knew it was more than she told me, since her and her boyfriend always seemed to get expensive things like jewelry and new phones around the time of my payments. In short, the rule for my payments is that I can't have access to the money, but it has to be used for me, not her. The only other option I had, other than magically getting better, was to get kicked out of the house and end up homeless without my benefits. I needed those to treat my conditions though. My mother and her boyfriend always would hurt me a lot, steal my meds, etc. Fiance learned the truth because I had a call up one day with him while I was cooking, and he witnessed my mom coming in and placing my hand inside a burning hot pan and screaming about getting more money I don't deserve. It took everything in him to not lose it at her when he saw this. He began to monitor everything because I would just be on Discord or Skype call with him during these times, so we could start gathering evidence by me leaving my phone on record at the same time as the call whenever I saw her enter the same room as me. Cue the nuclear revenge. One of the ways my mother tried to tie me to her was she would get me in debt with anyone and everyone she could, such as doctor appointments, college, etc. By stealing the cash that I had hidden from her to pay for those things, she was clearly also using my benefits for herself, which is against the law since it's meant for me. So, Fiance being the amazing man he is, he saved up money from his job and his active duty pay. He got me out of debt while keeping our evidence compiled and ready. The day freedom came, I snapped because she tried getting rid of Melly. After about 2 years of saving and biting the bullet, Fiance paid off my biggest debt, so I was able to have enough room to be able to move out. He had me move in with him. We then had all the recordings from the past 2 years and turned it all in. Social Security, of course, let me change my representative, so I then finally convinced them to switch the rep to being Fiance instead of her. During this time though, he was called to get stationed in a state that was very far away for his military duty, and Social Security approved and said it was okay since he had orders to go. The result, from what my older brother explained, Mom tried desperately to keep herself as my representative. She lost the money she was using for all her fancy things as well as her house. Yes, you read that right. She used my benefit money to pay for the house without telling me. She was found guilty of federal fraud and falsifying federal documents, among other things. I don't know how long she got. I didn't bother asking because I just completely cut her out of my life. Note, my brother and I are on happily sibling-friendly terms and we talk a lot, and my condition has improved since I was able to start treatment without having someone get in my way. Fiance is amazing and acts like a caretaker for me. When I left my mom, I didn't tell her I was leaving either, or else she would have done literally anything, including murder, to try to get me to stay. Edit. The reason I didn't leave sooner was because it's hard to leave a situation with zero money on top of having a medical issue to treat, and despite her allowing me to live there, she charged me rent and didn't inform me how much money I was getting. If I left without doing anything, I would have fallen on my face and been unable to care for myself. Leaving a situation like this isn't as simple as one phone call and done, especially when you don't even know the full scope of what they're doing to you. I wasn't a minor when I found out about this, and she had legal guardianship, so I could receive benefits in the first place. And yes, she did get charged with abuse. I just don't like saying that word, which is why I put among other things. So who wants to bet that the money that OP's mom was taking and using on the house wasn't reported to the IRS? Now, that's not an agency that you really want to screw with, and OP says that they might be reporting them there as well. OP, do it. Thank you to both OPs for posting their stories in the NuclearRevenge subreddit. They are linked in the description down below. Please go check them out. Check out one of these other videos, and if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories.